tonight. But first, a local leader in the fourth most dangerous U.S. city, St. Louis, is calling on residents to arm themselves with guns. St. Louis City Alderman Charles Quincy Troupe called the local police ineffective, outnumbered, and apathetic to the increase in crime this year. He says the community has to be ready to defend itself. St. Louis has had 157 homicides so far in 2008. That is 33 more murders than last year at this time. I'm sorry, Mr. Troupe, but in what universe does adding more guns to an already crime-riddled city make things safer? And if it's such a fabulous solution, why haven't city leaders in the top 3 dangerous cities, New Orleans, Camden, and Detroit, call for the same thing? Joining me now is Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. Larry, welcome back to our program. You and I have disagreed before on the issue of gun control, and I'm sure we're going to disagree again right now.
Well, thank you, Jane. Good to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you back. Other St. Louis officials say some of the most violent crimes are committed with guns that are stolen from law-abiding citizens. So to me, this suggestion will simply result in more guns being available to be stolen by dangerous criminals when they're doing their break-ins.
Well, the idea that you're putting forth, I think, is that of a gun-free zone, whether it's Virginia Tech or Mumbai, India. And the problem is criminals do not give a never mind about those gun bans in those zones. And in fact, we find that when we look at where they've been and where they've attacked people with their mass killings, they almost always go to a place where people are not allowed to defend themselves. So the idea that somehow more guns is going to make it more dangerous really doesn't work out in practice. If you go right across the river from Washington, D.C., which is one of our crime capitals, and not just political, you'll find that people can carry concealed firearms. We have a large urban population, and we have about 100th of the crime, of the murders that are committed in Washington, D.C.
Let me just say this, Larry, is that the argument that I've heard you use and everybody who is in favor of guns uses, hey, if I'm in my home and somebody comes in, I can kill them and it's justifiable homicide and I can save my life. That's why people want guns for self-defense. But here are some statistics. The FBI says in 2007, 14,831 people were murdered. Okay, 68% of those murders caused by firearms. Do you know how many justifiable homicides there were in the entire year? 391. So a tiny, minuscule percentage of all killings are justifiable homicide, which is the primary argument for having guns for self-defense.
Well, as a matter of fact, that's not the picture that emerges when you look at the data. First of all, those that have gone underneath and looked at people who have been charged with a murder oftentimes have the charges dropped when they find out later on that, no, that was a self-defense situation, or they might even go to trial and it'll be acquitted. But the first logging in of the charge is how you get such a low figure. The fact of the matter is when you do victim surveys, you find that people in this country use firearms over 2 million times a year to defend themselves, and to tell people that they shouldn't have a gun.
Well, then they're missing.
Well, as a matter of fact, you know, you've raised a good point. You don't have to kill or even wound to stop a crime. And when we look at the data, when we look at these victim surveys, we find that something like 96, 97% of all of these defensive gun uses do not involve firing the gun.
So why not get a toy gun and just wave it at them? Because basically you can't tell the difference with some of these toy guns.
You do that. I'm not interested in that. Right. Now, the point is, if we tell people, like the chief of police did there in St. Louis, that he doesn't have the personnel to get out on the street to help people, but he doesn't think people should be able to carry guns, what is he really saying? He's saying, I don't care if you get killed.
You're raising a good point. The alderman complained about 911. Listen to this.
When you call 911, you get an answering service. So if you get doing that and you don't have manpower, or the system don't allow you to make a complaint when you're calling, when you have an emergency, then it's absolutely, that's unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable.
I agree it's unacceptable, but why shouldn't we fix the 911 system? Wouldn't that be the correct response? Because if we give everybody guns, 911 is going to be more inundated than ever before.
Au contraire, there'll be less business for them. Let's look at what happened at Virginia Tech. 11 minutes for the cops to get into the building. That's when all the people were killed. Colorado Springs, when people in the church themselves that was attacked by a wannabe mass murderer had organized themselves into self-defense teams. The bad guy was down and assuming room temperature within 30 seconds. The police got there 5.5 minutes later. As the bumper sticker says, when seconds count, the police will be there in just a few minutes.
Yeah, well, I think that what we do need is a change. I don't want to see anybody who's scared go without protection, but there are other solutions, in my opinion, Larry, and I want to thank you, and I want you to come back and argue with me again soon.
Let's do what works. Let's do what they do in Virginia, not D.C.
Absolutely. I mean, neighborhood watch programs, an improved 911 system, and education. I don't think the answer is arming people, but we agree to disagree.